This is TWiT. I don't want to paint any technology as bad. I feel like Twitter has somewhat lost its credibility. Maybe I'm wrong. By the way, this is going to happen to Facebook this week. Thousands of employees will be laid off. So, in fact, I think probably Mark Zuckerberg said, oh, great, Elon just laid off 3,000 people. Quick. Send out the email.
Well, did they notify them a month in advance?
Yeah. Well, that's right. No. The WARN Act says you have to give them 60 days.
If it's a certain percentage, I think.
I have hopes, though, like this is going to be a different situation. I obviously feel terrible for anyone. But Simone, you mentioned this earlier. Stripe also had layoffs this week. The way they handled it was such a complete difference from the way that Twitter did. And I hope, certainly for anyone who's impacted by Facebook's layoffs, that it is much more similar to what Stripe did. And I think that it probably will be.
I mean, it is interesting. Like, these are huge companies: Twitter, Stripe, Facebook. Wasn't there another company that had layoffs this past week as well?
Yeah, there've been a couple.
There've been a lot. Like, the recruiters in the tech world must be going nuts right now. And where are all these people going to go?
Yeah, but we're also in a tech recession to a certain extent right now.
Well, this is why Facebook laid off people, right?
But they've also hired. I mean, there is the argument to be made that they were overhiring to a degree beyond.
Lyft just laid off.
Lyft, that's who it was, and it's interesting because we'll have to see how this shakes out, and it's harder when you see some of the really big companies doing it. But there is still a shortage of tech workers, and there are still like a lot of we don't have enough people to have tech jobs. But that I realize is not at all solace to anyone who's lost their job. And I'm not trying to say that it is, but we're in this weird situation where you might have some of the bigger companies that have to get smaller, but the industry itself is still. There aren't enough people.
In your role as developer advocate, you talk probably to a lot of developers at GitHub.
All the time.
What's the general feeling? Like we have a good skill that we will be employable and we're not going to worry about it?
I think it's a mix. I think it depends on how long people have been in the industry and kind of what their focus area is, because it's obviously a really difficult time right now. There's a lot of unease in the economy, and I think everybody feels uncomfortable, and I don't know if anybody feels safe, right?
Yep.
And so I think there's that sense, but I do also think that, and one of the reasons we've seen a lot of people move into tech and upskill, you were mentioning one of your sponsors earlier, teaching people skills, and this becomes a really important thing to continue learning and continue growing so that you can take on, jobs at other places as they come up. Right?
I have to think in the long run, you have, as a developer or an engineer of any kind, you have such a high level of skill and training in most cases, unless you're really junior.
Yeah.
You've got to be valuable to an economy that's run by technology.
100%. But again, I think it comes down to how are you willing to continue learning and upskilling? And this is what I tell people all the time, and this is what I've
You have to keep up
myself.
to date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if
But if you're a COBOL developer, you might be able to find a job.
Yeah, you might, but also keep in mind that if everybody had just stayed with COBOL and hadn't learned other things, then we'd have a glut of people and not enough jobs for them, right? So I think if now it's very specialized, right? It's very specialized right now.
That's a good point.
Whereas, 20 years ago, that might not have been a great place. So I think now it becomes, if what you're doing is, if you've become maybe overly comfortable, maybe you just, work on upskilling if you need to learn a new area they're not familiar with, or
learn a new language, learn a new skill, a new technology.
I don't know if it's like
learn
languages
a new
necessarily.
framework.
I think new frameworks, but also making sure that you're up to date on whatever the latest practices are. Like the development practices have changed a lot, even in the last decade.
That's the good news. It seems to be constantly changing.
Which I think that, and that's one of the things I say to people too, is that show that you're willing to learn, show that you're willing to evolve, because that, even if you are going into a job and you don't know the language, if you show, hey, I have experience being able to pick things up really quickly and I'm willing to put the work into it, that goes a long way.
Kevin Rose, his ears must be burning by now, always said that he hired somebody more for their ability to learn, their interest in learning, not for their existing skill set, but their desire
brilliant.
To get to their intelligence, right? Because then you can learn another skill.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a Ruby developer and we're doing Python,
right?
But you have this desire to learn and grow, and you've always stayed up to date, then I'm going to hire you because I need somebody smart. That's more important than somebody who knows Python, because you can learn Python.
You can learn Python. I think it becomes are you willing to be agile in that way? Are
Yeah.
you willing to evolve? And some people, want to
not.
do this, right, which is okay. But I think that's the thing that when I talk to developers, we try to encourage. We want to continue learning. I know that's how I feel in my own career.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.